Fiero, Pontiac's P car. Almost 4 years before it was even christened, this sporty two-seater had captured the attention and imagination of the media. Its history is traced through the buff books and trade journals and in such magazines as Esquire, Time, and Forbes. Why? What makes this car so different? And what makes it special? To find out, I talked to the two men who ought to know, Hulky Aldecalchi and Ernie Schaefer. Hulky was the project manager assigned to the P car back when it was still just a good idea looking for a shape. One conversation with Hulky, and you forget every stereotype you may have heard about the engineers who work for the big auto companies. Hulky is colorful, artistic, and dynamic. And more importantly, he loves cars. So much so that his life's ambition has been to build cars that are designed entirely from the driver's point of view.
So in 1978, the program planning group went to the corporation and proposed that we would design and build a two-passenger sports car at a minimum cost.
Well, how closely defined was that proposal when it went to
That was it. That's all the definition.
Well, it sounds like it was more of a dream than it was really a proposal at that point.
It was. It was basically conceived as two-passenger car that would handle very well, outstanding handling, and fuel economy, of course, was a very important issue.
So you really did get to start with a clean sheet of paper.
Absolutely clean.
Working with a team of dedicated Pontiac people, Hulky helped that clean sheet of paper evolve into the Fiero. However, it was Ernie Schaefer, the Fiero plant manager, who was ultimately charged with making it all work in the real world of automobile manufacturing. If Hulky saw the car into the world, it's Ernie and his people who see it off on its way. Ernie's a good example of the forward-thinking attitude at Pontiac. A real team player, Ernie recognizes the importance of unifying his team behind the Fiero quality commitment.
Well, Mike, I am absolutely convinced that the people we have in our plants, the people in the Fiero plant, are the most creative people to be found anywhere in the world. And all we need to do to capture that creativity is to get our act together, management and the union, and quite frankly, I think we can compete with anyone, anywhere in the world.
By talking with Ernie and Hulky, I began to get a feel for how the whole Fiero project came together. As Hulky indicated, it was late in 1978 that the product planning group at Pontiac first went to the corporation with the idea of building the two-seat P car. 6 months later, after conducting market research and evaluating all the implications of building such a different type of car, Pontiac was given permission to build a single prototype model. That was back in October 1979, and it's when things really started happening at the P car Project Center. A dimensionally accurate mahogany model was handcrafted, and from it, the tools were made to build the first actual P car. In April 1980, 6 short months later, the first P car was presented to the corporation, and Pontiac received the official go-ahead. Throughout this same time frame, the original design was being revised and enhanced. A full-size clay model was developed, and this P car became the first ever to be tested in the new GM wind tunnel. Aerodynamics was critical not only to P car fuel economy objectives, but to the mid-mounted engine's breathing and cooling properties as well. Naturally, Hulky had some first-hand insights as to how the car's design evolved.
As you know, this Fiero is a very low and very short car. So therefore, the hood of the car has to be very low. And that, of course, helps the aerodynamic qualities of the car, etc. But if you take the basic aesthetic value of the car, the engine just didn't fit in the front. Secondly, if you take the given that we are going to have a handling package for any kind of power, then you'll find that the engine drives one wheel and you steer the other set of wheels. And when you find that most of the power has to go right underneath the engine with its weight on top of it, then mid-engine becomes a natural solution to the problem.
The engine, a 2.5-liter L4 with electronic fuel injection, was outfitted with a new swirl port intake system. Because this technology allows for smooth, fast combustion, both fuel economy and performance could be enhanced. With these improvements, the 4-cylinder engine was selected for transverse midship mounting in the new Fiero. Obviously, Hulke was from the start committed to designing a driver's car. But that means a lot more than performance and handling. Production considerations. How the car would be put together with consistent quality was an important design issue. That's why people like Ernie Schaefer became involved early on in the process. The space frame concept. The idea of building a chassis that could function independently of its exterior skin panels was a key ingredient in the P-car design concept.
We didn't start with a traditional design. In a traditional design, there's a body and chassis going almost parallel. In this case, we took the basic attitude, we'll start with a driver and design the car around him for him. If you look at the car with the skin off, it looks very much like an Indy car. There's a substructure underneath. The skins are not necessary for the car to perform.
This basic premise, that Fiero would be designed and built around a space frame substructure, allowed the people at Pontiac to revolutionize their quality manufacturing methods. The big question was how to attach the body panels to the drivable chassis in a way that would allow a consistent, high-quality fit. The answer was resolved in the development of an entirely new piece of technology, the mill and drill machine. Only after the entire space frame is assembled are the holes for attaching the exterior panels drilled. First, the entire body structure is fitted into the enormous fixture. Next, the holes are simultaneously drilled into 39 mounting pads, which are then automatically milled down to the correct height. Because these holes are always drilled in the same relative position on the space frame, the body panels will always fit exactly right. It's this process that makes the drivable chassis concept valid and allows Fiero's functional needs to be isolated from its appearance.
There's another real plus to that, Mike, in that by having the drivable chassis, you can guarantee the integrity of the drivetrain, all the mechanical components, prior to putting any of the finished material on, and avoid a lot of the damage that's caused by mechanical repair over finished body panels, interior trim, etc. And we think that's going to lead to a much higher quality level in the Fiero.
Because the body panels weren't structurally part of the functioning car, a number of skin options became available. By late 1980, the buff books were reporting the car would be fiberglass. Later, they started calling it plastic. In either case, it's about like calling Richard Petty a Sunday driver. It just doesn't tell the whole story.
We have different kinds of plastics, and categorically speaking, the top surfaces, that includes the hood, the roof, the deck lid, and the quarter upper. They are sheet-molded compound fiberglass-filled plastic. The front bumper, fascia, and all the way to the fender opening, that's a reinforced urethane. So is the fender, and so is the door panel and the quarter lower.
Not only are they flexible, they can't rust. This raises some obvious questions about the ability of the rest of the car, the space frame, to resist corrosion. So I asked Hulke.
The total frame, after it is all machined through the mill and drill, it goes through Uniprime, which is totally coated inside and out with the anti-corrosive material.
With a rust-proof, dent-resistant exterior and a completely primed space frame, the Pontiac Fiero was sounding better all the time.
Fiero.
Still, as with any small sporty car, I had some reservations about safety. Hulke explained that all GM cars are required to pass specific, federally mandated barrier tests, and that Fiero had passed each of these. Of course, crash testing did take its toll of P-car prototypes. However, the people at the Project Center had been busy building new prototypes expressly for the purpose of testing.
After we packaged this car, we realized we have a car that's quite unusual to our experience. The engine in the rear, independent suspensions, and four-wheel discs, and plastic body. So what we did, we took a bunch of very highly experienced experimental engineers, and we sent them all the way from northern Canada, all the way down to Yuma. And they did drive that route and tried to figure out what kind of unusual conditions they run into. And through that, we ended up coming up with new tests that we didn't have before. one of the typical things that we didn't expect is the way this car goes through dust road. The front wheels make dust, and you catch the dust in the rear of the car. And that produced some problems, and we had to solve them.
Halke was responsible for resolving a number of the little problems that show up whenever someone tries to do something that's never been done. Talking to Halke, I became convinced of his personal enthusiasm for the car, and I couldn't resist asking him one last question.
Let me really put you on the spot here. All right, I'm the customer, and you're the Pontiac salesman in the showroom, and I come in, and I'm kicking the tires. What are you going to use to sell me on this car? What are going to be the big selling points?
That's a very interesting point you brought up, and I have been around cars a long time. This is one of the few cars you have to drive this car. Once you drive this car half an hour, you'll fall in love with it.
Halke was definitely right about the car, and from what I could tell, they'd done a lot of things right. In fact, the process of designing Fiero was really one of testing, refining, testing again, redesigning, and so on. Between 1978 and the summer of '82, a number of improvements were made. As the final design began to solidify, the first steps were being taken to move Fiero out of the laboratory and into the assembly plant. The timetable was aggressive, to say the least. In August, the Grand Prix plant, through which had passed nearly 10 million car bodies, was shut down. Demolition and renovation work began immediately. Within a month, the plant was completely stripped of its old manufacturing equipment, and the Fiero conversion was underway. By November 9th, the plant was ready for its first open house. Laid-off Pontiac workers and their families were invited in for a look at the new facility, and the Pontiac P-Car was officially christened Fiero. Work continued at an accelerated pace. By February 1983, only 6 months after conversion had begun, the pilot program was launched. As workers were trained on the new tools and machines, and as the bugs were worked out of the program, the pace began to pick up. By May, a number of the Pontiac workers were back on the job, and all the pieces started to come together in earnest.
We start with approximately 270 stampings, and that's the first thing that's unique in that we have the total responsibility for welding this body together. We receive all the individual stampings and weld them together in our body shop. Normally, sub-assemblies would come into a body shop and be assembled. As we put these assemblies together, we do it in a modular form. We have various modules that go together to produce this car. And then using the weld automation, the robots, we assemble the complete body and go through the mill and drill, which produces a very precise locating pattern for our exterior panels. The body then goes through an ELPO dip where we completely submerge the body in a corrosive protective paint that provides an excellent protection. And that produces what we call the space frame. Now, while that's going on, we also have the individual exterior and Duraflex panels coming in, which are painted independent of the body. We place them on special fixtures. They go through our paint shop where we apply a base coat color and a clear coat to these panels and then send them through a bake operation. In the meantime, the space frame body is coming over into our chassis department where we install all the mechanical components to the vehicle. That's the engine, the transmission, the steering wheel, all the mechanical hardware that goes into the car. And we completely build a mechanical chassis, which we call the drivable chassis, before we apply any exterior or interior trim. We actually roll test the car, check it out, make sure it's 100% okay before we put any trim in. Once we've assured ourselves that we have a good drivable chassis, then we start putting the trim on. We put the exterior panels on first, send it through a water test to make sure we have good leak integrity, and then we put the interior trim on once we have a good solid car. So the processing itself is terribly unique. There's no other car in the world that's built like it. And the reason for that is because way up front in the program, we work very closely with Halke in developing the process while he was developing the design of the car itself.
Developing the manufacturing process while developing the design of the car itself. Well, that makes good sense. Talking to Ernie, I could see that his enthusiasm for the Fiero project rivaled Hulky's. Ernie's excitement, though, was inspired by other sources.
What's been the most exciting part of this project for you?
Well, Mike, as you're well aware, there's a lot of exciting things. The car itself is certainly styled excitingly. The technology we've talked about in the plant is also at the leading edge of manufacturing technology and is very exciting to me. But by far, the most exciting thing to me has been the commitment that the people in the plant have made to producing a high-quality product that is so needed by the American marketplace.
It's been interesting. I'd set out to discover what makes Fiero special, and I was finding out that there's no simple answer. Some things quickly became obvious, like Pontiac's commitment to quality, that the design and manufacturing plans, from the start, were founded on good common sense. And the car itself certainly is unique. Even so, after talking with Hulky and Ernie, there was still a piece missing from the Fiero project that helped to make it unique. And there was only one place left to look. This is the Pontiac assembly plant. Every 1984 Fiero that hits the streets will first roll down this assembly line. The Pontiac workers here are building their own kind of excitement. And why not? The car is certainly unique. And it's pure Pontiac exclusively. And that brings out a pride in the workers for being part of this project that we found out when we visited the assembly line. Is this the kind of car that you'd be proud to say, sign your name to and say, you know, I built this car?
Yes, I'm going to order one.
Definitely. It's a great product.
During the week, Morris Main is here in the Fiero plant working a tool repair. But on weekends, he crews for Joe Ruttman's Pontiac on the NASCAR stock car circuit. This drivable chassis looks a lot like a Grand National car where you put the skins on afterward. It must be a neat way to build a car.
Well, it's a lot like a Grand National car and also an Indy type car. You got a tub that's built and then you're either aluminum skin or the fiberglass skin in our case goes on it, and it's, you know, makes a good solid chassis. It's just, you know, it's racy. It's solid, you know.
It's an all brand new car to all of us, you know, and you really want to get in it.
Why is the attitude of this plant so much different?
Well, this car is going to be a seller, and the people have a choice of going back to the old style, or else being here and enjoying the Fiero and working on it and being happy again at work, what you do, and take pride in what you do.
I feel like it's a chance for management and people to work together, a more positive self-image, a better product, a higher quality product, and an opportunity for a future.
It's a new car, it's a new project, a new plant, a new outlook. You know, the management is being a lot nicer.
Well, I feel I take a lot of pride, and it makes it a lot easier knowing that you don't have to worry about management coming down on you all the time, and people are taking more pride in the job that they're doing because of that.
When you came to work here, what did you notice about the morale of the people working in this plant?
Everyone had a great positive attitude. They were really together about the plant, excited about it, and they love the car.
I know that I want to be here and take care of my part each and every day. And with that attitude out of most of us, we'll find that we're going to put out something that you won't be able to beat anywhere else in the market.
We've seen the Fiero project come from a clean sheet of paper to the end of the assembly line and the end of our story. We've seen a great attention to quality, innovative design and manufacturing techniques, and most importantly, a tremendous amount of pride on the part of everyone that's been involved in this project from start to finish. The Pontiac people tell us that Fiero is an Italian word meaning pride, and maybe pride is what this car is all about. Hulky said it best when he told us that to really understand and appreciate Fiero, you have to drive it. And what better place to start than right here, where a car is born.